All right, you might know him from some big flicks, such as maybe Back to the Future or Charlie's Angels, or his own edgy work exploring cinema and the written word. Actor, director, and writer Crispin Hellion Glover joining us in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so exciting to have you here. I had so many people say, "You're talking to Crispin Glover. That's so cool."
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be showing the films and performing the shows for people in Hawaii.
Well, let's talk a little bit first about kind of what led up to this. I mean, people know you from so many different roles, whether it be, you know, in Back to the Future or in some other roles. Yeah. You were such a scene stealer, and it's just, whether it's comedy or horror or thriller type movies, it's quite the expanse of work.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have been working for a long time, and my experiences have led me to want to make my own films, and I'm proud of the filmmaking as well. Yeah,
you've talked about how some of the films that you chose were for the sake of funding this project that's been going on for, boy, almost 10 years now?
Well, much longer. I've been touring with the films for 10 years. And I started making the first film. There's a trilogy that I've made parts 1 and 2 of, which I'm showing on Friday and Saturday.
What is it? And It's Fine, Everything is Fine. Those are the two films that we're talking about.
Yeah, and what is it? Well, the one that you were talking about that I funded the second film, or the production of the second film, with money that I made from the first Charlie's Angels movie. I guess I'll talk about that.
I think we're looking at some of that video now.
This is actually the first film. This is What Is It? What Is It? Most of the actors have Down syndrome, but the film is not about Down syndrome at all. What it really is my psychological reaction to the constraints that have happened in the last 30 or more years of corporately funded and distributed film, where anything that can possibly make an audience member uncomfortable is excised, or that film will not be corporately funded or distributed. I think it's a very damaging thing, because it's that moment when an audience member sits back in their chair, looks up at the screen, and thinks to themselves, is this right what I'm watching? Is this wrong what I'm watching? Should I be here? Should the filmmaker have done this? What is it? And that's the title of the film.
And that's what's so important to you in this tour, is the dialogue, to be able to talk to people about what they're seeing, because the imagery is so stunning. And we're going to take a look at the second film now, and you really have a strong connection to Stephen, who wrote this, and his story, which is so dramatic on its own.
Yeah, Steve, this is the film I'm most proud of anything I've done in my whole career, and Steve wrote it. That's him there. He's the main actor in it. He was born with a severe case of cerebral palsy, and when his mother died in his early 20s, he was put into a nursing home, which is actually this nursing home. Wow. And he did not want to be there. And the people that were taking care of him would call him an MR, a mental retard, which isn't a nice thing to say to anybody.
But he's an intelligent guy.
Yeah, he was of normal intelligence, and I don't know, the emotional turmoil I must have gone through for that decade, I can't even begin to imagine. But when he got out, he wrote this screenplay in the style of a 1970s TV murder mystery movie of the week, wherein he's the bad guy, which was very important to him. And but the fact that he wrote it in this genre style as opposed to a standard autobiography, there are certain truths about his life in this kind of fantastical world that he set up, and it's really beautiful. I'm very proud of this movie.
And that's what audiences are going to get to see here. Finally, you're here in Hawaii. Let's make sure we talk about what's coming up Friday and Saturday. And there's a few different things that are happening.
I
perform
a live show. These are heavily illustrated books. The images are projected behind me.
That's the first part.
That's the live part. Of each night I do this, because I have the 2 different films. On Friday I'll be showing It Is Fine, Everything is Fine, and I'll be performing part 2 of the slideshow. There's 8 different books that it's an hour-long live dramatic narration. Then on the second night, it's out of order, but it doesn't matter. People don't have to see it.
So go both nights if you can. And I think the important part to point out is that people get a chance. They get time to talk to you, ask questions, and hear from you.
Yeah, I have the book signing afterwards, so I have both a personal thing, and then I have a right after the movie, there's a Q&A that is the whole audience, and then I have the book signing where I meet people personally, and I just talk to them as long as there are people in line. So.
And we really need so much more time to talk to you. It's not fair. We don't have enough time. All right, that is 7 o'clock, Friday and Saturday at Next Door. Crispin Glover here in town, hanging out and getting a chance to talk to him. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We need more time. All right, still ahead, a recap of the day's morning headlines. Coming up, time now 6:49. We'll be right back.